4041media.com is your one-stop shop for fresh, locally sourced media. Head over to 4041media.com. That's 4041media.com. 4041 Media, fresh, locally sourced media. On today's show, I am joined by Joe Amaral, and we discuss everything MCU, starting with the streaming service Disney+. We discuss the Loki series, the What If series, the Hawkeye series. Then we segue over to the movies and talk about Eternals, Shang Chi, and No Way Home. Warning, spoilers all over the place. So join us, will you? Because there is definitely no way home for Hawkeye on Free Your Geek.
By the power of Grayskull,
You have failed this city. Traumatize.
Winter is coming.
finish him. Fatality.
And welcome to the Free Your Geek podcast. I am your host, Jay Free, and alongside me today is a marvelous co-host by the name of Joe Amaral. I had that joke queued up, ready to go. I know you love bad puns. Joe Amaral, welcome back to the podcast.
How's it going, man? Good to finally be on the mic again.
Yeah, we were kind of talking a little off air, and the last time you were on, we talked about the Falcon and Winter Soldier. That was back in May, and the last time we had a Free Your Geek podcast was back in September. So happy 2022 to everybody. First podcast of the new year. We're doing this in middle of January as of this recording, and there's been a lot of stuff that has happened in the MCU since Falcon and Winter Soldier. So we're going to break it into two parts. We're going to kind of talk about some of the stuff that happened on Disney+. Then we're going to be talking about the MCU. So we will be discussing both Hawkeye and Spider-Man No Way Home. Spoilers. So I'm going to preface it now with all of that. And we can get into that right now. So let's talk about some Disney+ stuff. We did go through Falcon and Winter Soldier last time. So the next series after that was Loki. So overall, what are your low-key thoughts on Loki?
They just keep coming, don't they?
Yes.
I liked it. First of all, I did think it was out there. Like, I mean that in a good and a bad way. At first I was just like, damn, this is confusing stuff. I don't get all these time branches and things like that. But I think Loki, the actor there, Tom Hiddleston, I think he made that a good series. I don't know if anybody else could have pulled that off. Him and Owen Wilson worked good together.
Wow.
What?
I just went, wow.
Wow.
I can't do my own. Yeah, I agree. I think it was good. I think what's tough for me personally was to kind of see. So in the MCU, we've seen Loki kind of go through this whole transition where he was kind of the villain. Even he was a sympathetic villain. If that, you saw him, kill Phil Coulson, kill a bunch of people, eventually rehabilitate himself all the way to like becoming better friends or had more good in him when he was helping Thor in Thor Ragnarok, to the point where he almost tried to take out Thanos.
Yep.
And he died because of it. But because of what we saw in Endgame, it was the Loki that just had killed Phil Coulson. So all that character development was essentially taken away. We had to kind of not start from square one with him, but kind of understand like this is not the same Loki that we saw. So I think it's the first episode where he sees kind of like his highlight reel of his life.
Yeah, which I kind of like that the best. I like that they gave him the highlight reel of this is what you end up doing in the future.
Right. And so I think that was a quick way to get him up to speed to kind of, feel for him a little bit more, knowing that this is not the same Loki, as it were, that we were
Mhm.
accustomed to seeing. And I like the idea of the time variance and the time branches. And I agree with you. I thought it was super confusing because I had conversations with people along the lines of, well, if the Marvel universe, the MCU, which we've grown accustomed to, is the one true timeline, then anytime anything happens, that would be a branch, wouldn't it? But then I also thought from talking with it, no, each timeline is set. So the timeline with Sylvie, when she became a variant, it
Mhm.
was that timeline was supposed to play out a certain way, but she took a detour from that. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out. Is it one timeline, the timeline that we know, or all these multiple timelines, and then the variants get taken when they veer off course? Like that's the stuff that I always had
Yeah, there
issues
was.
with.
I, I didn't. I didn't like all these weird versions of Loki. Like there was an alligator Loki, and there was an elderly man Loki, and like almost like a Viking type Loki. I just thought it was like, come on, like
Yeah, what a
all
crop.
of these things are completely different. Like we'll get to Spider-Man about those variants,
Right.
but those variants were similar to each other. Like all the
Right.
Spider-Man and you
Right.
know,
Well, I think Old Man Loki, I believe it was in the 5th episode where he talks about how he ended up killing Thanos in his timeline. So
oh
I
wow.
think I think that was the Tom Hiddleston Loki. Not it wasn't the actor obviously that played him, but that was him going through that timeline aging, and he just lived on these worlds like solitude. And then once he decided to, like, he was so lonely, he stepped off. That's when the TVA grabbed him. And he actually had the classic comic book Loki outfit on, which I thought was kind of cool. A cool
Yeah, that
nod.
was
But
cool. They brought that back.
yeah, I enjoy that, but it also kind of, we can kind of like move that forward now if we want to talk about from that series to the What If series. We had an animated series which took topics from the MCU, which we know and we've already seen, and then kind of like put their differences in there. So obviously Captain Carter, where Peggy Carter gets the super soldier serum, versus, we have Doctor Strange where he's trying to save Christine, where she's the one that dies,
Mhm.
versus, Marvel zombies. Like everybody's doing a zombie thing now.
The,
So
the one thing I didn't kind of watch was the what ifs. I mean, I kind of knew different ones that existed, but I didn't really watch every one of those. I've been only really watching the actual like series with Avengers in them, you know.
yep, yeah. Okay, so I'll spoil it a little bit for you then. So basically,
I'm probably not going to watch it because
okay,
I'm not down with the what if because what's happened has happened.
right.
I don't
But
like to think of.
what's going to happen though, but this is going to tie into what we're going to be talking about later on.
Mhm.
So what if is it's all these different series. So like where Thor and Loki, actually Odin never adopts Loki, so how Thor grows up as an only child and is way more selfish and kind of a party. That one's like very, very light, but everything else, Peggy Carter with the super soldier serum, zombies, Doctor Strange basically going to this other ancient place and trying to find a way that when Christine dies, that's a fixed point. She's always going to die in that timeline. So he basically tries to find a way to save her. And then the ancient one actually splits him into two. And then one of them becomes evil and malevolent and tries to go to the underworld and get all these other beings to find a way to save Christine. That's a whole thing. Anyway, so it all boils down to at the last episode where the Watcher who's watching all this, Ultron actually gets implanted in Vision. So it takes the Age of Ultron movie where instead of the Avengers stopping Ultron from creating the Vision, they don't stop him. Now Ultron is inside the Vision's body. He ends up killing Thanos and takes all the Infinity Stones for himself. And he
Jesus.
goes around and then he finds out there's all these multiple realities. So he's going through and destroying all these multiple realities with the Ultron protocol. So the Watcher grabs all the other characters we've seen from the other what ifs this season, and he gathers them together and forms the Guardians of the Multiverse. So
Oh wow.
so they actually ended up defeating this Ultron. So what happens is, and we'll bury the lead here, but at the end of Spider-Man No Way Home, we have the trailer for the new Doctor Strange movie. And Doctor Strange comes face to face with the evil version of himself from the What If universe.
Yep, saw
So
that, and that
I,
was
I think it's going to
definitely
be, so I think
interesting.
it's really good. Yeah. I don't think you need to watch it per se, to watch the What If to get into that. But we want to talk about multiverses. We talk about different timelines with Loki. We talk about if things change in a particular multiverse, what happens in that multiverse. And then we move on to something that's a little less out there, if you will, a little bit more contained in reality, if you will. And we get to see Jeremy Renner take place or act in his own Marvel series Hawkeye. And what were your initial thoughts of that? First of all, before you even watched it, when it was announced, because typically for me, everybody's like, Hawkeye, okay, yeah, he's the least, interesting Avenger,
That's what I was going to get at was I've always been interested in him because he's the only one. Him and Black Widow were the only regular people, and even she I consider a little different because her upbringing was so weird that she's just this gifted assassin. He was the most regular guy, and he was never out there with armor. All he had were his stupid arrows. So I kind of like watching TV shows like this because he's not the regular superhero. He's not the guy in the Iron Man suit, or he's not this guy with superhuman strength or speed. He's just a normal dude, and he still somehow is alive.
Well, I think there was in one of the episodes where he's I think it was when he met Maya, the first episode that he met Maya in, and she said that he's cheating or something with his gadgets, and he goes, well, I just use a stick and some string, you know what I mean, as his weapon. And I'm like, that's pretty funny. Yeah, but yeah, I was interested because I like the fact that he's it's his skill set that he uses, you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
And Black Widow,
I liked it in general, and I liked that the girl was already sort of this accomplished archer, but she did it on the school level. She did it she went to competitions and stuff like that. She had never actually been in the thick of things like he did, and I like that they showed her childhood, when the Battle of New York was happening. That's basically why she became, or why she did what she did, because she saw a Hawkeye out there and was like, wow, this guy is saving people, and it's just a guy with an arrow. So she wanted
Hawkeye
to be that.
saved her life. Her life, and it's from there. Then unfortunately her father passed away, and the mother, she was scared that the aliens were going to come back, and her mother talked to her. That say the heroes were the ones they showed him what would happen, and then she basically said, what do you, I'll do anything I can for you, sweetie. And then just watching Hawkeye, like you said, she wanted a bow and arrow. And then they kind of skimmed a lot of her backstory over, but they talked about, another medal, another trophy for another martial arts competition or what. So they kind of already put in your mind, this girl's kind of badass too. She's good at archery. She knows martial arts. She knows Taekwondo, whatever else it might be. So it's kind of cool to see in a long scheme of things. Again, another series more grounded in reality, if we want to put it in that sense, because we've been talking about, series where it's alternate timelines and time variance and things changing. And this is more, here's a black market underground auction that, and I loved more than Hawkeye itself. I think this has been a great vehicle for Kate Bishop. I'm assuming based on the last episode where she's trying to give all these names, Lady Hawk and all this stuff. Yep. He basically is giving her the Hawkeye mantle.
This Hawkeye show alone planted so many seeds for the future, even with randomly characters from Daredevil popping up, not necessarily all of them, but one of them popping up in this TV show. And I was kind of like, whoa, what the hell? They're actually finally going to take the TV shows and kind of maybe stick them in movies now. Maybe these guys will have a role like the Punisher and Daredevil and all these guys.
I'd be totally down for that. Yeah, we did see Wilson Fisk. So the actual Hawkeye series was based off of the Hawkeye comic book by Matt Fraction, and a lot of the stuff, the tracksuit mafia was in there, and they were just they were hilarious. They were pretty much the comic relief. They're just a bunch of goons, but they were led
dummies.
Yeah. Hey bro. It's, and I just thought it was so good. But yeah, we saw their, for lack of a better term, leader Maya, and she's going to be in her own series called Echo.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. They're doing a Marvel series based on Echo. She was actually, I believe, and I could be mistaken, but feel free if any of the listeners or viewers want to correct me. I believe Maya was actually the first Ronin in the comic books, and then she gave that identity to Hawkeye. So they kind of did a little backwards, where Hawkeye was Ronin in Endgame, and then came back, and the whole series of Hawkeye essentially revolves around the Ronin identity. That costume, it was found on the Avengers compound. A Rolex was found on the Avengers compound, so it's at this black market auction, and Kate somehow gets in the middle of it, puts on the Ronin costume. So now, because Ronin killed a lot of the tracksuit mafia back in the day, including Maya's father, she's out for revenge against Ronin, and it just so happens to be, that's how Kate Bishop kind of gets brought into it. But I just think it's kind of interesting because the comic book, with Hawkeye and Kate Bishop is so well done, and Lucky the pizza dog's in it, all these different type of things that we saw in the show. But this is going to lead to Maya and the Kingpin, I believe, in her series Echo, because in the comic book she shoots him, again spoiler alert, but we see in the last episode, she finds out, or she is led to believe, that he's the one that tipped Ronin off, or he had a hand in tipping Ronin off to wear the tracksuits were. So he's indirectly or directly responsible for her father's death just as much as Ronin is, or Clint Barton was. So I think what's going to happen is, in the Echo series, I think we're going to see Wilson Fisk in there as well, because she does pull a gun at him and the camera pans away as she pulls the trigger. In the comic books, I believe she shoots him in the eye and it caused temporary blindness in him. So I think that's what we're going to see, which again would tie really, like, imagine a blind Wilson Fisk and then running into a blind Matt Murdock. Like, imagine if he's in there, that'd be kind of cool too. So all in all, I mean, I really like that. And then of course we saw what I thought was the highlight of the Hawkeye series. There's two people. There's Jack, who I thought was the absolute highlight. Her,
is that the husband?
The fiance.
Yeah, with the sword.
Yeah, because that was an Easter egg as well, because in the comic book, Hawkeye is trained by, I don't remember his last name, but his name is Jacques, whatever, and he goes by the Swordsman. And he trains Clint Barton at the circus, and then Clint Barton becomes a thief, and then he becomes a hero. His whole storyline in the comic book is a little bit different. So that was a nod to Jacques, the trainer of Hawkeye, with Jack, with all the different swords. So that, and he was just, he's a red herring. You think he's like in on it. You think he's, part of this, like he's a horrible human being. And it's just, no, he's just a lovable goofball, that's his only part. But then of course,
then let me guess, Yelena. I've been wanting to say Yelena.
Yeah. So we were led to it at the end credit scene of Black Widow, where Val basically goes up and shows Yelena a dossier saying, I thought you'd want to know who's responsible for your sister's death, and shows her that picture of Clint Barton, which, that ties in the same time. That's Kate's mom is hiring Yelena at that point to go in. So it's all interconnected. The events at the end, the end credit scene of Black Widow ties directly in to the Hawkeye series, because it's like, this is what happens. Now she's going to New York. And then just her back and forth in the comedic parts between her and Kate. I think if they make a second Black Widow movie with her as the lead, they need to put Kate Bishop and her as almost like a,
I actually like that they got along like the whole time. There really was no hostility, because Yelena sort of took her as a joke at first, like she's just a silly kid.
Right.
And then she got to know her and was just like, I think a few times they even acknowledged liking each other.
Right.
Like during this whole issue.
Well, and
but
then,
yeah.
No, there's also parallels, because I think in one of their earlier episodes of Hawkeye, they I think she said, Kate asked Clint, what was the best shot you ever took? And he goes, it was the shot I didn't take. And it really shows like his affection, how he saved Natasha. He was supposed to take her out, but he knows she wanted out. So he didn't eliminate her. And then fast forward, I believe it's that same episode on the rooftop, Kate pulls the bow and arrow on Yelena, and Yelena looks at her and just gives her a no. And she doesn't take the shot there. So this is the next Hawkeye and Black Widow here. That, we had the partnership between Natasha and Clint. So now we're going to have Yelena and Kate as a partnership. I would love to see either a series or a movie with those two.
Hasn't been determined, right?
No,
they're gonna. Okay.
No, but it has to happen. That something between those two characters, and just Florence Pugh is, I think, a delight. Like just the way she, from the comedy she brought to Black Widow, talking about all the different posing and just all that stuff, and just the silliness, and then but she's also so badass. Like the writing kind of leads to both the comedic effect and like the badass effect. Like even when she's like fighting Kate and like in the office at that last episode, and she's like, oh, you were really good with that punch and that kick and whatever. And she's like, okay, bye now. And she throws the grappling hook into the ground and just like dives out the window. I'm like, to go from being like that's super funny to like that super badass is amazing.
Yeah. I was gonna say something, totally forgot. Yeah, I was gonna say I wonder what they're gonna do with Clint from here on out. Like, is Clint gonna keep going, or is he eventually? I mean, he's got hearing loss, and he's kind of a family man. Are they slowly phasing Clint out with this show?
I would agree with that. I think this is kind of like a swan song for two different characters. I thought, one, this is for lack of a better term, this is the mourning that we had to do for Black Widow, because in Endgame, we didn't really we saw like a couple of scenes real quick with like her dying and sacrificing herself, but we never really got the gravity of that situation. And we see her best friend here in the Hawkeye series still struggling with that amazing Tony Award winning Rogers the Musical.
Oh man.
But we see even there's a shot that lingers on the actress or the actor playing Natasha, doing that bit, and he, the music fades out and he's looking at her, and it's just, you can tell that gravity. And then he's like visiting the monument with all the Avengers names, and he's trying to talk to her and saying, I'm sorry for what I'm about to do. I think it really deals with a lot of the emotion and the aftermath of Natasha's death. I'm just like getting all mush mouth over here, but Nat's death. And then I think the second part is, I think this is a swan song. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Clint do like more cameos in upcoming Marvel movies, almost like kind of like he becomes the next Phil Coulson, almost like in the sense.
Yeah, I was, you took the words out of my mouth. Like, I feel like him playing a role like that, or Maria Hill, or kind of just the person in the shadows that helps Nick Fury out. That would be a good role for him, so that he could occasionally keep coming back if he wanted to. But as far as a standalone movies and Avengers movies, he might have to start sitting it out. Because I mean, he can't even hear anymore.
Right. Well, I would think it, like, to your point, I think it would be cool if they do another Black Widow, or if they do a series with Kate and Yelena. Like, what if they're in over their heads and all of a sudden, like, they're surrounded, and all of a sudden just an arrow whizzes by and hits like a pipe that lets out a bunch of steam, and they look over and it's Clint, and he just gives like a, hey, how you doing? And that's it. You know what I mean? But like, he could show up and do like little things like that, I think would be kind of cool. Or kind of like he can be like their wheels person, if you will, in the sense that, like, he's piloting like the jet or the Quinjet or whatever, drops him off and reconvene, whatever, so he's kind of out of the fight. But
they're definitely setting up like a Young Avengers team.
Yes.
I'm still not exactly, I mean, I don't really know Young Avengers, but that's what it looks like. It looks like they're trying to get these new up and comers to create their own little group. I don't know how that's going to happen, but Kate seems to be pretty important part of it.
I think it would be Kate. I think it'll be Yelena. I think it'll be, depending on what they do, I don't know how they're going to do it, but in the comic books, it's Scarlet Witch's two kids that we saw from WandaVision. So I don't know if they'd recast or how they do it there. And then it's I believe it's the Hulkling. So it's
she's a She-Hulk too. I mean,
there's a She-Hulk coming out, but there's also and we can talk about it a little bit later, but in the Doctor Strange trailer, there's a young girl with a jean jacket or a denim jacket with, I believe, a star on the back of it. And that's America Chavez. I forgot her character name, but she's one of the Young Avengers too.
Got you.
So yeah, we can talk about that after the break, because that'll be get into our Spider-Man No Way Home and MCU talk of what's coming down the pipeline. But overall, where do you rank? How would you rank we won't put What If in there for you, but just in general, where would you rank for WandaVision, Loki, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and Hawkeye? How would you rank them as far as what you've enjoyed?
You said Loki, Hawkeye, Falcon, Winter Soldier, and WandaVision.
Of those four, which one was your favorite?
My favorite, I think it was Falcon Winter Soldier.
Okay.
I just liked that it was just straightforward action, and then Baron Zemo I thought added a lot to that. I liked those three actors together, and I liked all the action. I like that, like evil Captain America.
Yeah.
That was pretty sick. So I would say that one just because that's my taste. But I thought WandaVision was much smarter than I thought it would be. I didn't know what to expect. It seemed like an old timey sitcom, like from the previews. And I didn't get what they were gonna do with it. But once you watch, then you're like, oh, this is what's going on. It's not reality. It's just what she builds as her own. So I would say that might be number two, but I don't want to give a third place to Hawkeye because I actually really liked Hawkeye. I like that, it brought about Kate Bishop and Yelena and Kingpin. So yeah, I'm gonna go with my favorites, Falcon, Winter Soldier, and then the other two are a tie
Okay.
between
And
WandaVision and Hawkeye.
So then Loki's at the bottom of that.
It has to be because I probably liked it the least.
It's just funny. So my list, I'll throw What If in there too. I actually like Hawkeye the best. I just thought, like, for me, like the character development, introducing, I thought it was great.
I get that argument too because it was different. Like it was good. It was like a kind of like a buddy. What do you call it? A buddy action thing, like
Right.
the mentor and the mentee.
And I absolutely agree with that. And then I would agree put WandaVision at number 2. Then I would probably put Loki. Then it's a toss up between Falcon and Winter Soldier and What If. But for me, my argument for Falcon and Winter Soldier, and this is my personal taste, I think that Hawkeye and WandaVision had a lot of character development. So you get to you get a lot more into Wanda. You got a lot more into Vision. You got introduced to new characters such as Agatha, and then her kids, Wanda's kids. And then at the same time within Hawkeye, you got a little bit more background on Hawkeye. We get a little bit more background on his wife, who, by the way, that Rolex was hers. I should have pointed that out. And it had the SHIELD logo on it. And then it had Agent 19, which meant, I believe that's their version of Mockingbird, which we saw Mockingbird in the.
So they were basically stating she's an agent of SHIELD that nobody knew.
Right. In the comic books, Hawkeye and Mockingbird have a relationship. I don't know if they're married, but she's a superhero as well. And they led, I can't remember the actor's name, but she played on Agents of SHIELD. She played Bobby Morse, who is the version of Mockingbird in the comics. So I'm almost wondering if the Agent 19 is kind of like the Mockingbird name is kind of almost like a Black Widow name. Like, you're a Black Widow, you're a Black Widow, you're a all these women are Black Widow agents, where you're all Mockingbird agents. So we can still have the Agents of SHIELD one, which is the one with the name that we know from the comics, but we also have this Mockingbird who's married to Hawkeye, which is also in the comics, but it's not Bobby Morse, that's not a real, it's a whole thing. But anyway, I like that. I liked introducing Kate. I like the fact that they brought in Kingpin. They introduced Maya. They brought in all these other characters from the comics, Grills and Lucky the Pizza Dog, all these other like different characters, where I kind of different that with Falcon Winter Soldier, I feel like the villains, or the reasoning for Falcon and Winter Soldier for the villains methods weren't as fleshed out as I would have liked. Like the Flag Smashers, like, I get it, but if there was maybe 2 or 3 more episodes and you could give me a little bit more on why the Flag Smashers are trying to, they're trying, everybody's mad that people returned after the blip, and they want, everybody else is like gotten things that were still there for those 5 years. Now everybody else has been displaced. I get that anger and argument, but give me a reason to care as to why they're against all that stuff. You know what I mean? Or why they want it to go back the way it was. Or, I just feel like that. But again, I agree with you. U.S. Agent, so good. I love seeing him fake Cap and everybody hates him. I thought that was so good. And I love the back and forth between Bucky and Sam. I think that was great. I also think that with Loki, to what we discussed a little earlier. I just thought I got a little confusing with the timelines. That's why that's not as high. I love Tom Hiddleston. I love the interaction with him and Sylvie. Again, I wish that there could have been maybe 2 more episodes to deal with their relationship and their back and forth and then, kind of that romantic thing. And I would like to see more Owen Wilson. Who doesn't want to see more Owen Wilson on your screen?
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
But yeah, that's how I'd rank it too. But
They were all solid, I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't a bad one really.
Right. No, I think it's good. So.
Yep.
Yeah, and then what if was good, but I love the idea of like taking, hey, this is what you've already experienced, but what if this happened? What if this changed?
Yep. And I've thought about that too. Like what if these certain things happened? But I have trouble watching an entire season of this because it's like, okay, all these hypotheticals
right.
a little much.
There was another good one I didn't mention at the top of it where Killmonger actually saves Tony Stark from the events of Iron Man 1.
I saw that, yeah.
And it's actually really cool. And it's like he uses, and it kind of ties Black Panther and Iron Man together, which is kind of cool, the 2 movies. But awesome. Yep. Well, that's been the Disney Plus series. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to go from the highs of the Disney Plus series to talk about some of the lows and highs of the MCU. So we'll be back after this break.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
And welcome back to the Free Your Geek podcast. I am your host, Jay Free, and let's swing in to some MCU movies.
Rascal.
I'm horrible with the puns. I'm here with Joe Amaral, our go-to Marvel guy. Pretty much anytime we do a podcast talking about anything from the MCU, we like to have Joe on because Joe is an MCU fanatic, and I don't know. I like your take on things. You and I sometimes have very similar opinions, but I also love how you take like deep dives sometimes because you're not as big of a comic fan. So when you see something or you watch one of the movies, you're like, oh, I read this article that this is what this is going to be. And I'm like, that's so flippin' brilliant. I love that. So
yeah, I like to analyze everything and see what's out there. And then I'll like see something and be like, oh, wow, that's a good point. I wonder if that'll happen,
Right. Exactly.
And I was never, like you said, I was never a comic guy. Like I was, as a little kid, I would watch the cartoons. So for me, the introduction were the cartoons like Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, X-Men, when there was a cartoon for every one of those.
No, I was going to say, I know we're going into it, but I wanted to bring up because you just put it in my head. I know we just kind of closed the book on the Disney Plus series, but they're revamping the X-Men cartoon, right?
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Disney Plus is bringing back the X-Men cartoon, and they're going to pick up right
cool.
where they left off. And so I don't know if it's going to be the same voice actors and stuff, but I hear the animation style is going to be the same. So That's what I was going to ask you,
because it really all matters if the animation style is the same or not. It has to be the same, or else it's just something completely new.
So I didn't know if as soon as you said that when you watched the cartoons as a kid, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that the cartoon is coming to Disney Plus.
That's crazy.
I think it's going to be called, I forget, because there's a comic series too. I believe it's called X-Men 97, because I think that was like the last episode or the last season was in 96. Crazy. So I think it's going to be 97 or whatever. But yeah, so be on the lookout for that. But let's leave Disney Plus behind. Let's go to the MCU. So we're going to talk about 2 movies. I want to talk a little bit about the Eternals first, just because it's a different type of Marvel movie than we're accustomed to. I think every other Marvel movie, for the most part, not that it's cookie cutter per se, but you have like a steadfast villain. The villain typically has the same or similar powers to that of the hero. So we saw that with Iron Man, Ironmonger, Captain America, Red Skull, Ant-Man, Yellow Jacket, all these, Guardians and Ronan was a little bit different, but everybody, there's a powerful and equal enemy. I think the Eternals kind of was more of a character building and a world building movie, less more of a good guy versus bad guy. If we want to keep it very simplistic, it was more of like saying, here's other parts of the world of this universe.
Or kind of how almost like this is how things began in a way. Yeah.
or here's some other stuff that's happening below the surface that you didn't know about, that's happening concurrently while everything else is happening. And they do that a lot in comic books and all these secret organizations and all this other stuff. But at the same time, it wasn't a straightforward, here's the good guy, here's why the bad guy is mad at the good guy. It was more of, here's all these beings that have been around forever, here's their purpose. And it's almost kind of like a murder mystery to a point. And then it's a lot of character building. It's a lot of like introducing all these. I don't remember how many off the top of my head, but I want to say there's maybe 8 or 9 Eternals, and I could be totally wrong with that. But you kind of
a whole bunch of them just everywhere,
and it's kind of tough, like remembering so many names. And I think that kind of goes into hand in hand where Marvel was smart at the beginning of the MCU. Let's do a solo Iron Man movie. Let's do a solo Captain America. Let's do a solo Thor, and then bring them all together on the Avengers team, as opposed to, here's a team that's already existed for years. Let's introduce you to all these characters at once. And like, I can remember Icarus. I can remember Cersei.
Athena.
Okay, Athena. Yeah, you know what but I'm saying, like, can you remember like all their names? You know what I mean?
No, I can't.
And that's what I think kind of the point is, right? It's like, I like it for what it is, but to me,
it was just like, here they are, they exist, and these godlike humans or whatever, these manufactured powerful humans that are just appearing now. It's like, I know they say, oh, they were told by the Celestial they couldn't be involved in like the Earth's wars, but I feel like when an event like Infinity War and Endgame happens, for them to just not be around at all is a little nuts.
Well, that and the point is, like, so that their whole point, which they were, not to spoil it too much, but their whole purpose of being on Earth is to see it flourish and populate. So once it reaches a critical point, this what is it, a celestial being is born, right, and then devours the Earth or ends life on Earth or whatever planet they're on. So I'm like, if that's their purpose, is to see the population keep growing, and then Thanos is here to basically wipe out half that you're basically like putting a stop to the Celestials' plans. Why wouldn't they want to get involved?
I found it interesting that everything was, or the introduction of that Celestial or just one of the basics, like we were introduced to Ego. He's a Celestial, but he's not a Celestial that follows the rules, I guess. He kind of was just like on his own planet, and all he cared about was expanding.
Which that also makes me now question why you brought that up, because, and this is where I think that, not that they have to have, like, they need to have something where they can tie everything together, or somebody doing some continuity, but that brings up a point you just made me think of. Ego is supposed to be putting himself on all these other planets, right? So why wouldn't the Celestials stop him? The other Eternals? Because
exactly.
He's basically put his own seed in the planet of Earth. If that took over, wouldn't that kill the other Celestial that was buried in the Earth's core? You know what I mean? Like, and then we also find out that Thanos is an Eternal, I believe, at the end of the end credit scene.
That was cool. And well, I know when I looked it up, it was Thanos is isn't he half Eternal, half deviant? Yeah. Or he had a deviant gene, and that's why he looks like he does. I don't know.
Yeah. So it's all opening up a can of worms where it's like, if this is the route you're going to go, I'm fine with it. And again, I could be totally wrong. And somebody in the comments, whether it be on YouTube or on the podcast, want to correct myself, I want to correct Joe, please feel free. Just, as I always say, just don't be a dick about it, because we're kind of going off the cuff here. I thought overall, though, I thought it was visually, it was a good movie. Like the cinematic aspect of it was great. I just feel like the story, like, is rushed. So I know I kind of like, I don't know if I ever showed you this particular video, but I think I introduced you to the pitch meetings from Screen Rant. So
yes, I haven't.
Watch the one on the Eternals and watch the one on No Way Home. No Way Home is a little bit like, you kind of like roll your eyes a little bit, but the one with the Eternals is so good. So good. I'll send it to you after we're done recording. But let's move on from the Eternals, which I thought it was okay. It's by no means even a top 10 favorite of mine.
I agree.
I think it's serviceable. I don't think it's the worst, but
It's yeah, it's kind of a good like what's next, but they definitely rushed a lot of information into one movie. It would
right.
have been nice if these characters popped up randomly in other
So
movies.
in the pitch meeting, he was, oh, so why don't we just, we have, oh, great. We're going to introduce all these characters. This would be a great series for Disney Plus, which each episode could introduce you to a different character and you get to learn them. And like, oh no, we're going to cram this into a 3-hour movie. It's like, it's pretty damn funny, but,
Yeah.
let's move from that to a movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. And again, we're going to spoil the heck out of this, but, Spider-Man No Way Home, man. What do you think? What do you think? Overall thoughts?
They made it as good as they could have. Like, obviously, there are all the rumors that all these different characters were coming back. I think they did a great job hiding the fact that the old Spider-Man also came back. Just because there were rumors, but there was no hard evidence that these guys were actually in the movie. So the whole time I'm assuming they will be, but yeah, if you dig deep, sure.
No, dude, somebody found out, like, how they released all the trailers. So you have the scene with like the Sandman and the lizard like attacking. Somebody froze it and they showed the lizard's head getting hit, even though he's just jumping. They're like,
I saw that.
Oh, who's hitting that? It's like, okay. But, I thought it was cool. I think all in and of itself, it was a love letter to like fans of the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi movies, fans of the Andrew Garfield movies. I think it was super amazing. No pun intended. I don't know. The whole thing, and they finally have their Uncle Ben moment. I was super excited when it was like, the Tom Holland movie, Uncle Ben's already dead. They're not going to do the whole thing of him dying. And we see that happens with Aunt May. And I'm kind of one thing that's going to upset me is I'm not going to get a chance to see Marissa Tomei on my screen anymore. But I thought that was really, really cool that they basically flipped it. They gendered.
Yeah, they still have they had parallel lives in a way,
right?
But slightly different. And I like how good they all looked. Like, well, particularly Andrew Garfield and Toby. Toby to me looked great. I know when he did his Spider-Man movies, he was probably so young anyways, so he hasn't aged that much, but I thought he looked great.
Well, isn't that movie turning 20 this year?
Yeah, exactly.
It's been 20 years,
that was a while ago.
dude.
And even Doc Ock looked great.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much of that Marvel, de-aging stuff they used, like they used with Sam Jackson and stuff for Captain Marvel.
But still, I mean, yeah, Alfred, what is his name? Alfred Molina?
Yeah, Alfred Molina, Willem Dafoe.
He looked good because he even did interviews and he was looking fine. Sure, they put a little makeup on, but he was doing actual interviews and it looked like the same dude. So he hasn't aged that much either. I thought that was cool, them working together, like swinging together.
Yeah.
And none of them knew how to work as a team except Tom Holland.
Which is amazing.
But
I loved it. I loved the fact that it picked up right after the, Mysterio reveal. I think the fact that we saw like his life being turned upside down, and the fact that, again, we want to talk about Easter eggs and cameos. We talked about the Kingpin and Hawkeye, Matt Murdock coming by and being Peter's lawyer. Which I believe he's going to be in the She-Hulk series as well, and that was on Disney Plus.
What's crazy, man? That one of the few things I haven't watched is Daredevil, and I'm in the middle of it right now.
Oh, nice! You're watching the what season are you on?
Season 1. So I'm really not that into it, but I'm almost done with season 1, and just because I have to like really know who he is. Yeah. Because he popped up in a Spider-Man movie, and now I'm like, I need a background.
What I'd recommend, and I don't know if you've seen it yet. There's a watch order out there, but season 1 is the best, in my opinion, the best. Season 2 is good only for the introduction, in my opinion, of I can't think of his name, but he played Shane in The Walking Dead as Frank Castle as the Punisher. John Bernthal, I believe it was. Yeah, he was great. And then season 3 is actually really good too. But Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio in that series is awesome. Jessica Jones is another one worth checking out.
Yeah, like admittedly, I didn't stay on top of those because I didn't know if they were gonna connect to the MCU because I'm kind of a snob and I sort of just stuck to MCU movies.
Well, they are tied, but they're not tied. It's like
Yeah.
a whole
So the
thing
only
of
ones
like,
I watched full seasons of were Luke Cage
yeah,
and Iron Fist.
okay.
And
And
then when they all teamed up, I
and the
watched that.
Defenders, yeah.
Yeah.
Dude,
But there were some I missed, like Daredevil.
I'll tell you this,
Death Justice.
Jessica Jones season 1, it's a little bit different. It's not like total action, but dude, it is a mind F with some of
Really?
the stuff. Like I
I'll
watched the
check that
first episode and I was like, okay, I see where they go. Oh my, no. Oh my God. What do they do? Like I was just totally, my
Yeah.
mind was blown after that first episode.
Sweet.
And I believe it's David Tennant plays Kilgrave in that. He is flipping incredible. But
Nice.
anyway, that's been our little, hey, go watch the Netflix series if you haven't
Yeah,
watched those
exactly.
too. So,
They're
but
good.
it's definitely darker. It's definitely way more violent than the PG-13 stuff that you get with the MCU. But going back to the MCU with, or actually technically Sony and MCU with No Way Home, yeah, Charlie Cox reprises his role as Daredevil, as Peter's lawyer. So we get a quick little nod to him. It's a 2-minute scene, but I absolutely loved it. I flipped out in the theater when I saw that.
Yeah, that was one I was shocked about because the whole movie you're only focused on. Are we going to see the Spider-Man or all three Spider-Men together? Or are we going to see all the villains from the other movies? And then you see Daredevil pop up, and you're like, "What?" Like
How is this
that was out of the blue.
Yeah. So after that, what else happened? So yeah, essentially he goes to Doctor Strange. So we have Benedict Cumberbatch in there reprising. And he had a lot more in the movie than I thought he was going to have. I didn't realize he was going to be in as much of it as he was. We got a couple things to know since he was dusted. We also found out, or he was blipped, we should say. We also found out that the new Sorcerer Supreme is Wong because Doctor Strange was gone for 5 years. So Wong's now running things.
Oh, dude, you know what we missed?
What do we miss?
We never talked about Shang-Chi.
Oh shoot! Let's get into that. Let's get
Not to interrupt. You mentioned Wong, and I was like, oh shit, that's where he was.
Yeah. Okay. So do you want to finish up on No Way Home, or do you want to take a reprieve, talk about Shang-Chi, and then bounce back?
Yeah,
to
we
No Way
can finish. We can finish what we're doing.
Yeah. Let's finish it. We're on the No Way Home. Yeah, because I totally spaced that out too. Because Black Widow also happened, or did we talk about that too?
Yes, it did. It did. We might have to save.
Yeah, maybe we'll do 1 month later. Maybe we'll do like a rewatch or something. As
like a revisit.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about. But yeah, so we see Doctor Strange perform a spell to try to make everybody forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. It's like typical anything else. It's like when dad's trying to do something, or mom or dad, and the kid's like, hey dad, poking the bear, like keeps like interrupting. You can't concentrate, and Strange's spell goes a little hectic. And
just to cut you off real quick.
Yeah.
That bothered me that the Sorcerer Supreme, this guy who can do a lot of magic, just decided to help this kid out with this reckless spell. Like I don't know, if you're supposed to be like this protector of Earth, shouldn't you maybe stay away from these risky spells, especially after Wong is like, listen, there are consequences to this spell.
Right.
Like, let's relax. Strange is just, I think part of him is still very much from Doctor Strange 1, where he's just like this arrogant dude who's like, I can do anything.
I'm going to do what I want anyway. Well, exactly. I think he mentioned it to Wong that he's done it before. And then he says, don't you remember? And I forgot what the example he uses. And Wong's like, what are you talking about? He's like, exactly. Like, so it's kind of like he's done the spell before, but it's like, as he's doing it and having to make all these alterations based on who Peter wants to remember. And then instead it goes a little haywire, and it brings everyone that knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man across the multiverse into this world, into this universe, which is why we get all the villains. And like you were saying, Doc Ock looks good. Green Goblin looks good. Sandman looks good. Thomas Hayden Church.
Yeah.
And then Jamie Foxx, they kind of fixed Electro, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, I definitely like that they didn't make him blue and weird, like in the Amazing
and then
Spider-Man.
The Lizard.
Yep, I liked that Doc Ock, like if you, I totally forgot that in Spider-Man, what was it? Spider-Man 2,
Yep.
he mentions that his arms are nano. And so when it came to Stark's nanotech, his arms could sync in with Stark's nanotech. And
Yeah,
I found that like genius. Like, because I had to go and watch it again, and he actually mentions that it's nanotechnology.
it's crazy, right? And then it like, yeah, it kind of like syncs up with the Stark's nanotechnology, the Iron Man suit.
Hmm.
And now he's got like Iron Man tentacles, which I thought was cool.
That was cool.
And then, he realizes that that's not his Peter Parker that he knows, because he only sees the Spider-Man suit. Then once it's revealed that it's, Tom Holland instead of Tobey Maguire. So it's cool. And then you see the scene of them capturing all these villains. And then it gets put in Peter's head that rather than sending them back to die, because they were taken, I guess, the moments before they died from their respective movies, they were brought back. And so Peter thinks
all of them.
he can fix whatever was going on so they don't die in their, which again, to me, from a storyline purpose, I had a little bit of a problem with it. Like, when you say you're going to fix them, like at what point are you fixing them?
Yeah, like did they still die in the past, or are they now alive?
So for example, right, we'll use Alfred Molina as Doc Ock. He dies by taking that sun fusion thing to the bottom of the ocean, right?
Mm-hmm.
So because he sacrifices himself because he finally overrides the chip with the that controls the arms, because the arms took over the AI took over his reasoning and stuff. He finally has. So they fixed that. So are they gonna put him back as he's floating toward the bottom of the ocean? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
thing.
the message I got from it was that they all got a second chance somehow. I don't know how that affects like the other movies now, or maybe they're not going to do another Andrew Garfield or another Tobey Maguire movie. Like, how does that affect anything? I don't know. If it was for the sake of this one movie, cool, I guess. I wonder how that works out down the road for the others, not
Right.
Tom Holland. And is Tom Holland even sticking around for Spider-Man?
Oh, he is. Let's talk about that, and then we'll talk about. I want to talk about two things, and then whatever else you want to talk about at the movie. But I want to talk about the emotional moments that I thought, like, I don't know about you, and I'll be man enough to admit this because I'm not like whatever, but dude, I was like, I got teary-eyed. That rooftop scene with all three Spider-Man actors talking about like,
oh yeah,
like just the fact after Aunt May died, and then like Andrew Garfield talking about how he couldn't say it, like, and then Uncle Ben, and then Uncle Ben, and then all the just like that whole bit, like, to me was just like so like kind of moving. And like I was like, and then obviously Aunt May dying and taking that Uncle Ben role, like all of that was very, very emotional for me. And then toward the end of the movie, let's talk about the end real quick. He goes back to Doctor Strange, and to end up saving everything and putting everything back, he has to do a different spell, not forgetting that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, but forgetting Peter Parker entirely, which to me kind of messes up some stuff, because we see Happy at the grave of Aunt May, and then he wonders who Peter was. And it's like, so he's never knew that she had a nephew. Like that.
I definitely did. I didn't like that. I didn't like that. And nobody knows him now.
I understand why they did it though. Just because like, toward the end, that other scene, that the one that got me was he goes to that coffee shop that MJ is working at. Yep.
And Ned's there.
And she doesn't recognize him, and he's going to go like remind her. And then he's like, oh, what happened? And then she goes, oh, I had it doesn't hurt anymore. And then that moment that he realizes like, oh, I caused all the people I love pain. Everybody that is, with Spider-Man dies, or knows that I'm Spider-Man dies. Aunt May died. All these villains died. And I put her in danger because she knew my secret. And he decides not to remind her or tell her who he was. Like, and that's Spider-Man 101. You know what I mean? Like in the comic books, he's just, they call it the Parker luck. Nothing ever turns out his way, and he's always bringing it on himself. To me, it kind of relates back to the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, where Mary Jane Watson is like, I love you, Peter Parker. And he's like, I love you too, but we can only be friends, or I only love you as a friend. I'll always be here for you as a friend. And he walks away because he doesn't want to put her in danger. It's kind of like that same parallel where it's like, I just did this whole thing. I just stopped everybody that knows that I was Spider-Man from being in danger now.
Yep.
Why am I going to go like pull her back into this? Even though she like, it's lonely for me. I'd rather sacrifice that. I don't know. I got chills like watching that and I'm thinking about that, but I think it's going to be.
I like that. Sorry.
No,
finish.
good. No, your thoughts are good.
I like when they were having trouble fighting all those villains and they had to do a group huddle real quick. And Tom Holland's Spider-Man is just like, I don't like to brag, but I have worked with a team before with the Avengers. And Toby's just like, oh my God, that's great. Who are the Avengers? Like,
because in their universe, the Avengers don't exist.
Yeah, I just think it's hilarious. Like Toby in all his movies had to do shit by himself.
Yeah.
And then Toby, and Toby bragged about fighting an alien in space. And then one of them was just like, oh, I fought an alien, but fighting one in space? They're like, that's crazy.
And then I fought a guy in a giant mechanical rhino suit.
Yeah. The Russian dude there.
Yeah. Well,
was that Giamatti?
Yeah, and he played the character of Rhino from the comics, which that's kind of tough to bring to the screen. But yeah, that also brings up a good point too, is that the end credit scene, and we'll talk about that in a second. But at the end of the Spider-Man movie, No Way Home, he's now like typical, which is like perfect because I've always said that I really like the casting of Tom Holland as Peter Parker because, and this is no offense to either Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire, but I couldn't buy them as high school students, even though it was like, hey, you know, like they looked a little bit older. Tom Holland, I could get as a high school. Now moving on to college, now you can kind of get into that role where you get the, you know, Parker with the dead end job, trying to like take pictures for the Daily Bugle. And, you know, he's trying to make ends meet. And he's got that makeshift Spider-Man costume. Now he doesn't have all the Stark tech anymore. Like it's kind of like back to basics, which I absolutely love. And before we talk about the end credit scene, one other thing that popped into my head was there were a couple of different scenes where, so I think you remember the Tobey Maguire, I believe it was either Spider-Man 1 or Spider-Man 2 where he had a back injury.
Oh yeah.
That was
a great joke.
They did that scene where in that Spider-Man where he lands, he's like, oh, my back. And they recalled it in this movie.
I got this thing with my back.
Yeah, which was hilarious, which I thought was great.
And he said, want me to crack it for you?
I just love seeing that, like, you know, like that brotherhood of the same character. Like, it was so cool.
Yeah. That was cool. They actually had a lot of chemistry.
Yeah.
Like the three of them.
So
and then all three of them are in lab coats, like their nerdy selves working on these anecdotes for each of the characters. Like that was cool. And before I forget, I'm sorry, to interrupt you. I love the Doc Ock holding the arc reactor and saying power of the sun in the palm of my hand. Throwback from that crazy.
Yeah. They did so many like nods and like homages. And then I don't know if it's there now. I'll have to rewatch it, but you know, the meme with the two Spider-Men pointing at each other. Like I think that was kind of like the same thing with the three of them.
Oh yeah. That's pretty much it.
So I thought that was cool. So what I do want to talk about are the two post-credit scenes. Let's talk about the Eddie Brock one first, because that leaves huge implications because we weren't sure if we know at the end of Venom, Let There Be Carnage, you see the news report about Peter Parker being outed as Spider-Man. And he's like, the Venom symbiote comes out and goes, I hate that guy, or whatever he says. So it leads to the credence that the symbiote is of a hive mind. So the symbiote that attached itself to Topher Grace in Spider-Man 3 is the same symbiote that's with Eddie Brock. It shares the same knowledge and memories with all the different symbiotes, and a little piece got left behind after he was sent back to his universe, that little piece of symbiote. So now we could be leading to a symbiote Spider-Man costume / Venom in the Sony / MC universe, which I'm totally for.
Oh, of course. I was wondering when Tom Hardy and Tom Holland were eventually going to meet up. I don't know if that's even going to happen, but they've definitely opened up the possibility with that little, piece of Venom just hanging out there. they can do anything now.
Yep, absolutely. And that leads to what I was going to be talking about next, was that Doctor Strange trailer, which
Yep.
looks so badass. And we do see
That
a
looks
quick
crazy.
scene.
Yeah.
We see a quick scene of that girl, and I believe it's a denim jacket, and I think that's America Chavez. Again, I can't remember her character name from the comics, but I believe they were saying like that was her scenes got cut from No Way Home. She was supposed to be in
Okay.
No Way Home. So
know
instead
that.
of that, they ended up giving Ned the power to use the sling ring to open up portals, but her power was going to be to open up portals and bring the other Peter Parkers in. That was supposed to be her part in the movie, but now she's apparently going to take part in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. So I'm curious to see how that's going to come into play there. And we're going to get Wanda in there too. So
Yep.
I'm super psyched.
Craziness.
I love how all like the What If and the WandaVision series are now tying into the MCU and the cinematic universe. This is what we were talking about before too, with like having, it's not necessary to watch the Disney Plus series, but it helps flesh out this universe. Even the end credit scene on Black Widow with Yelena, which led into the Hawkeye series. Now we're getting stuff from WandaVision and What If leading into the next Doctor Strange. I think it's just super cool.
Yeah. I feel like the use of post credits is at a different level now, because now we just expect one, and it's almost like it points in the direction it's going next, like the next movie. I kind of like that they do that. That's why I was so pissed when Endgame, the end of Endgame, there was nothing. You know,
right.
We're so used to at least one post credit scene, you know?
Right. Well, and that's the thing, right? It's like, that's the end of that chapter of whatever. Like now we're going to start anew. So it makes sense, but it's funny because I was in the theater for No Way Home and the credits start rolling and like people started leaving. And I turned to my friend and Danielle and I was like, is this their first time in a Marvel movie?
Exactly. I do the same thing. Everyone gets up and leaves and it's like, what are they doing?
And then the first post credit happened and people laughed, watched it, whatever, like, oh, that's cool. And then more people left. I'm like, you guys have to wait until you see that Sony/Marvel logo.
Yeah. Like wait it out.
It's like another 2 minutes. Like,
all I think is a bunch of amateurs.
Yeah. They're not veterans like we are as far as it pertains to the MCU. But let's talk about one other MCU movie, which that you brought up. Let's talk about Shang Chi, because we didn't talk about that real quick. Like thoughts on that.
I loved it. I honestly, of all the movies that have come out and all the TV shows, that was my favorite. I was shocked at how good it was. I know he's a brand new character and they sort of had to rewrite some stuff with the 10 rings. But the addition of this guy who sort of does his own fight scenes, like, you know what I mean? He's already like this specialist. The action sequences were sick and the story was sick. Like I like the mythological stuff in there. Like that worked.
I absolutely agree.
And then Trevor, what's his face? Trevor Slattery.
Yes.
Adding him back to sort of connect it and explain things, I think was a great idea, because that's all they had left from that movie. You know what I mean? Explaining the 10 rings, all they had was him.
Right. And I think overall, I agree. I think the action scenes were good. I love the actor. I can't think of his name that plays Shang-Chi. Aquafina was in it. And then Shang-Chi's sister, which I'm curious if she's going to be the main antagonist for the sequel, or if she's going to be leading like taking the 10 rings. And, a lot of it, I don't want to say it was woke in the sense that she opened it up to women as well, but it's like,
yeah, I know what you're saying.
I get it. Like the fact that she was like watching her brother train when they were kids. And now all of a sudden it's like, hey, like I can't train because I'm a girl, or whatever the reasoning was. But the fact now that she's running it and now she's got both men and women and she kind of combined it all together, I think is like so cool. Because I'm not saying that it is, but I'm saying now you're getting more overall power for whatever mission. Like who's to say, there's certain things that, not to get too woo woo and woke, but there's certain things that men can do that women can't, and vice versa when it comes to like fighting and, and painting with broad strokes. But, women can be better martial artists than men because, like flexibility and whatnot and frame and stuff. But I just think it's so cool that she's like the leader of this now. And Shang-Chi's going to kind of being brought in by Wong to like, and then let's talk about that end credit scene.
Yeah. Which that was great.
What are those rings made out of?
Yep. I like that it brought back some of the original characters, like Hulk and
But
well,
he's not in Hulk anymore. He's Bruce Banner. So I wonder if he's going to be
Bruce
switching
Banner.
back and forth again.
Yep. And
I'm
then
wondering how that's going to
Captain
be.
Marvel and who was it? Wong. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I think
believe
it was
it's
the
Wong.
three of them. And I love that this predates even the books and Kamartaj that go over like the oldest stuff.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering is this are the rings somehow tied to the Eternals? Is it something maybe like a celestial power or a celestial?
That's not a bad guess. I didn't even think to connect those rings to the Eternals.
So I don't know.
That's possible.
Because
those rings, like I was trying to think like if they had anything to do with an Infinity Stone, or if they were the equivalent of one that nobody knows about. You know what I mean?
What if no pun intended, but like what if they use the reality stone to will those rings into existence way back in the day, and that's why it predates. It came from like who knows? It could be.
Yeah, it's way back because like we're talking old. Like, are we talking older than the Infinity Stones? Because even
the Infinity Stones were created in the Big Bang. So unless this is from another world.
Yeah. But but it's crazy because people know about the Infinity Stones. Nobody knows about the rings. That's why it's very strange. Like, so I'm curious to see where that comes from. That's a good guess you mentioned with the Eternals, or maybe even a Celestial. Like they come from that.
I don't know, but you know what it does do? It does create intrigue and more mysteries moving into the next phase of the MCU.
Definitely.
Whether it be, I know they're doing Black Panther. I think they resumed production on Black Panther 2, which I'm curious to see. We have Doctor Strange coming up. We have Moon Knight coming to Disney Plus. We have She-Hulk coming. Like all this stuff, it's going to be Fast and Furious. So, and not the movie. I'm just saying in general. But yeah, well, Joe, I want to thank you for being on the pod again.
My pleasure, man. Good to spitball with somebody. I can't talk about this with everyone.
Yeah, well, we have March 30th is the drop for Moon Knight on Disney Plus. So maybe end of April, beginning of June, once that series wraps up, we'll have you back on, and you can
definitely
can spitball with that, and maybe another movie will be out, and maybe Doctor Strange will be out, and we can kind of wrap those two up together.
The good thing about these movies and shows is they don't seem to ever end. They just keep coming. So there's always something to talk about.
Well, it's
too much.
Well, I'll leave you with this. This is a little bit of an aside, but my cousin and his wife, my godson, is 5, and he's really into the whole like Marvel, DC, all this stuff. All the kids like stuff on Disney Plus, and they have like the really like cheesy cartoon Spider-Man for kids and stuff like that. I can't think of the name, but my cousin's wife Liz sends me a text message. She goes, for Pete's sake, how many super villains are there? 'Cause she's trying to like go through like all these Batman, I like Batman villains. She's like, there's like more than 5. I'm like, yeah, you don't realize like Batman's been around since like, I believe the 40s, and then either the 1920s or 40s. I can't remember. I'm like, so, that's like 70, 80 years of like stories. So they're going to need villains. Like you think about the X-Men, you think about Spider-Man, there's so many villains they haven't even touched yet. You know what I mean? Like that they can go to. So like, that's just the history and the whole, like, I don't know, like the world building that they've done. There's so many villains to keep these stories fresh. So, and by that same point, there's so many heroes that they haven't touched on yet that they've created. So where to go? Like we know the Fantastic Four are coming. We know the X-Men are coming. There's going to be MCU stuff with them for years now. So that's maybe that'll be phase like 8 or 9 or 10. Who knows? Like we'll be having a podcast in 2029 talking about X-Men 2. You know what I mean? So, but
Tony will come back from the dead.
Well, they could, it could be a variant. It could be a variant.
I'll keep my fingers crossed.
Yeah. Who knows? Well, Joe, thanks again for being on. As a valued guest, I just want to let you know I'm sending you 2 tickets to Rogers the Musical, so you can go check that out.
You piece of shit.
Hey, listen.
How's it going? I actually thought you had real tickets.
No, I do.
Like, this guy giving me tickets?
I do. I make bad puns because I could do this all day. I could do this all day.
I could do this all day.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks, man. Until
problem,
next time, this has been Jay Free and Joe Amaral for Your Geek. Just reminding you, since I usually have my co-host do it, but I won't subject you to that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us, and get your geek on.
I like it.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Jeff. Have a
Thank
good
you.
one.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.